improvement at Rolls-Royce in the services division. So
Okay.
thank you for recording, Ramel, and over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
Perfect. Can you just confirm for me that you can see the slides?
Loud and clear. Very good.
Perfect. Thank you. So just
Yep.
for your awareness, I've got my presentation here and the Teams meeting over there, so I can see any hands up that come in as they go through as well. So yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining in. So I'm Sarah Good, Head of Improvement, as Suzanne said, at Rolls-Royce. And I'm going to talk today about improvement within the CQI Profession Map. So a little bit of introduction to me, a bit of my background, bit of an introduction to the Profession Map, and then we'll go into detail around the Profession Map and improvement within there, and then time for questions and answers afterwards. Okay, so who am I? I'm Sarah Good. So I started in Rolls-Royce in 1997. I know I don't look old enough, thank you very much. But I started on the shop floor as an inspector of turbine blades, which are the lovely things that you can see there. Moved on to be a manufacturing engineer, also within the same business unit, so turbine blades. And during that time, so on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see some of the continued professional development that I did. So I went on the pilot Rolls-Royce Greenbelt course, so I did 2 DMAIC projects on rework reduction. I also then started completed a foundation degree in mechanical and manufacturing engineering, because you can't be an engineer at Rolls-Royce if you haven't got an engineering qualification, quite rightly. So I had to go off and do that. I then became kind of hooked on improvement after having done the Greenbelt stuff. So became an improvement leader, again in the same area that I was working in before. So I was familiar with the products. And then decided to take a big step over the road. And anybody that's worked in a big company, when you step over the road, you work into a whole different environment. So over from making turbine blades to engine build. So main big civil large engines, Trent 7s, 9s, 1000s, and the XWB was just coming in when I was there. I did my black belt accreditation during my improvement leader role. So 1 on DMAIC, looking at rework reduction in that part of the business, and 1 on flow. So rearranging how the processes flowed and how we better looked after our engines. I then sold my soul to the devil and became an operations manager, production leader. So looking after the fitters and the inspectors on the shop floor. Best job ever. Some days the worst job ever, but absolutely loved my time there. Then decided that I wanted to go back into improvement, so became an improvement manager in central functions, so rolling out the production system, including transactional production system rather than just manufacturing. When then I also did my lean coach accreditation, so not just Sigma but lean, and how to coach people, how to advance their understanding. And then moved completely into a different part of the business, in services or overhaul, aftermarket, for a program manager for a bit, looking at transformation, and then moved into the role that I'm in now as head of improvement. And I joined the CQI, completed my chartership last year, and I'm actually part of the group that Suzanne mentioned earlier, looking at the progressing to fellowship. So just to give an insight of the roles, the products, and the continued professional development, which is really important if you're going to progress through the different grades. So a little bit about where I work. So in services, so this is once you've bought the aeroplane and it's up and flying, just like when you've got your car running, we've got customer service, where we're offering information. We've got on-wing services, so part of a flight-to-flight value stream. So how do we do stuff on wing so it doesn't need to come off? We do engine overhaul when it does need to come off. We can do component repair, so instead of always having to have new, can we repair something, reuse it? Spare engine services, so do we need a spare one to make sure that our stock levels are there to support customers if they have any issues through their operations? We've got a great partnership with SEVA around global logistics, because as you can imagine, there's lots of movements of aircraft engines and parts around everywhere. We also have digital platforms, so how do we get information from our engines? How are they working? What are they doing? You know, and gathering all that information to give us insights to how we can improve our products and our processes. And then we've got project leadership as well. So we're flight to flight, so it's literally connecting the world. How do we make sure that one flight then goes to the next flight, then goes to the next flight? So one of the things that struck me from this is we support about 2 million flights a year on a 24/7, 365 days of the year. So this is a snapshot from the Service Control Centre, which shows the Rolls-Royce powered aircraft that are going at any one time, and depending on what time of the day it is, you'll see different kind of clusters and groupings, and we're not obviously flying over Russia at this point in time. We have presence all over the world, so we've got an America's site, obviously the centre of the universe, Derby, and Singapore and Beijing. So we've got airline support teams across there which will directly work with our customers, and then we've got that's the on wing, and then we've got the off wing stuff, which is our customer to customer value stream. So this is when an engine has to come off, so it's removed, it's sorted out to be shipped, it's shipped, it's got ready for induction and launch, so is the paperwork there or the parts there. Then we get to kitting, so we try and reuse, repair, and get new as few times as we can. So how do I get repair components? How can I reuse stuff? And then we build it back up again, we test it and dispatch it, and then we ship it back out again, and then it's ready to be installed onto the engine. And these are all the facilities that we have around the world that enable us to do that. So quite a small part of the business, but a massive part if you put it into scale. It's probably a FTSE 50 on its own. So within that, my role is to support any kind of improvement activity that's going on, whether that's priority project support, so defining what the priorities are from the information, doing problem definition, making sure the rules, tools and processes are there for improvement. So how do we coach people? Making sure that we're doing belt mentoring, so we've got an improvement function, but actually everybody can be involved in improvement. How do we make sure we're growing that capability? Because you can't always grow capacity, but you can grow capability. And then creating that culture of continuous improvement as well, so making sure that everybody feels like they can be involved and that there's an environment that supports that. And how we do that is people will have an idea, and the first thing we ask them to do is ask the question, can they do it themselves? And if they can, it's a JDI. Sometimes there's an extra letter submitted in there, but JDI, just do it. And if they can't, then they can send the idea in. We'll add it to our improvement hopper, and then we'll decide the next steps. So we measure this against our business priorities. So we might go, do you know what, we can't do this. It's not a viable project because of X, Y, and Z, but we'd make sure we feedback why we're not going to do it. Or then we get there, well, it's a nice idea, but it's not a priority at the moment. We'll feedback, but we'll keep it in the hopper, because when either it gets to the top of the pile, then we can do it. Or we have two bits where we can get business improvement to help, and the COE in here is just Centre of Excellence. So we either have the top one here, which I like to call a BI cuddle. So they might just want a bit of help on problem definition or scoping a workshop, or remind me again how I do a value stream map. Or they might want a bit more detailed support. So they might want somebody in an IPT or heading up a meeting or heading up a workshop or a lean event to really get that skill set embedded within the IPT. And then people just record it. So this is just showing how that goes back. So this is about culture, creating that culture to enable people, and this is how we're coaching and facilitating and supporting people. So that's me and my role in a nutshell. So I'll go on now to the profession map. So the profession map has got the 5 key competencies. There is a guide to the profession map, and that's on the CQI website, www.quality.org. You don't have to be a member to go and have a look at the profession map, I don't think. So you can go in and have a look, and this really helps you to navigate your professional journey. So it talks about different layers, and then one of the 5 competencies within there is improvement. So the improvement competency, it talks about you're able to facilitate a culture of evaluation, both qualitatively and quantitatively, and learning improvement, which drives more effective, efficient and agile ways of working to support business strategy, enhance reputation, increase profitability. How can we make it go quicker, faster, more effectively, cost less money in a really, really quick and agile way. So that's what we're looking for at this bit. Now, my next slide is a caveat here that this is Sarah's interpretation of what I think the profession map means. So Ramel will be able to feed back if this is not correct. But it talks about, there's 3 main stages, and it talks about delivering sustainable improvement. And for me, this is about snapping the elastic. How do we stop going back to what we were doing before and making sure that we're doing things? So the 4 tiers around where you can spot an improvement opportunity, you can deliver an improvement on your own, you can coach others on improvement, whether that's sponsoring projects or leading multiple improvements, or when you get to the top of the profession, that you're guiding an organisations on tools and methodology and framework. There's managing change. So I like to think of this in terms of a fixed to growth mindset. So are you very closed on, or we've done that before, or that'll never change, or that's the way that it's always been, to opening and unlocking your mind to the ability of, oh, how could we make this better? Is there an opportunity for us to go and do that? So you start off with, you will follow the changes that have been implemented. I come in, I do this, it tells me to do that. Tomorrow it tells me to do this and I'll do something different. The next level is you start to get involved with some of the changes. So helping to be involved with how it might change. And then the next level is you're actually starting to deliver some of these change management projects. And then at the next level, then you're actually managing the change programs and advising on tools, methodologies, frameworks, maybe guiding people of where they need to go and do the change, and advising on some of the softer skills as well as the tools. And then there's innovating and creating opportunities. So this is like, once you've opened your mind to the art of being able to change something, this is then, well, how do I harness that? How do I grow that capability and get people to want to innovate and create new opportunities? So this is about continuous improvement. So you start off with what contributes some ideas, and then the next bit is you try to actively experiment, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then you start to lead teams to determine experiments. So we could try this or we could try that. And then right at the top of it, you're developing or advising on how to create an environment where doing an experiment or having innovation is the norm and managed effectively. So it's interesting that Suzanne and I had a chat earlier, and there's a debate about continuous improvement and continual improvement. Continuous improvement is it happens all the time, naturally, it's just continuously evolving. Continual improvement is you do a bit, then you stop, then you do a bit, then you stop, then you do a bit. Now, you might do continual improvement on a process, but actually as an organisation, you want continuous improvement to happen all the time. So it might be a bit over there and a bit over there and a bit over there. So it may feel continual, but as a complete ecosystem, it's actually continuous. So there are the differences that way subtly. Okay, so when I talk about then, I'll talk about there's 4 tiers in each of the competencies. So what I was going to do is do tier 1 on delivering sustainable change, tier 2 on managing change, tier 3 on the innovation, and then I'll go back to sustainable change for level 4 for tier 4, because that's really where my skill set lends itself to. And the tiers are all around how you would progress through to your chartership. So you need to be 3 or 4, I think, for both leadership and context, and then a 3 or a 4 in one of the other 3 to demonstrate that you're a specialist. So for me, it was leadership and context, and then really focusing on the improvement stuff, just to put that in context for people. So if we snap the elastic, and this is probably one of my favourite diagrams that I do with it, because what we have is, so you'll have a standard to start off with, and then over time it drifts. So if you think about, if you've got kids who have their pocket money because they tidy their bedroom, and over time it drifts, and then you go, it's pocket money day, so they rapidly get it back to standard. And I have that many people come to me going, Sarah, I've done an improvement, I've got it back to standard. That's not an improvement. You've just got it back to where it should have been before. When we want to talk about delivering sustainable improvement, it's what's the improvement you've made? How have you changed the standard? What's the improvement you've made? How have you changed the standard? And obviously you do it 3 times at least. What's the improvement? How have you changed your standard? And then you've got a gap from the original standard to the new standard, which is continuous improvement. It is not getting it back to standard. That's a deviation. So it talks about in the different tiers the things that you can do around improvement. So this is talking about you can define problems, performance gaps, and improvement opportunities really clearly. Now, I'm confident that everybody on this call can do this, that we can spot the performance gap. Smiley face, sad face, red or green. So the faces are important if you're colourblind, like 2 of my team members. Yeah, it should be 10, we got 10, super. It should be 10, we got 5, not so super. So we can spot a gap. What we don't have is what's the problem, who's the action, what's the action, who's the owner, and when are you going to do it? You may also maybe hear this as the 3 C's. So what's the concern or issue? What's the cause? So you might go and find out what the root cause is, and what's the countermeasure, which is the action. And then for those of you that were with me when I talked about the high-performing teams, you may well remember the bottoms on a rugby post. So how do we make sure that we get a really good problem definition? So the who, what, when, where, why, how. And if you start with those as a statement, you're going to get really better problem definition than when I was a production leader and people used to say to me, the machine's not working. Brilliant. So what about it isn't working? Who found it? When did they find it? Etc. So it's that kind of information. And then it talks about contributing to problem solving or improvement activities. Just volunteer as an improvement leader, as an improvement manager, now as head of improvement. I don't think I've ever turned away the offer of help with an improvement. So even if you're not confident to lead it, but you're interested, just put your hand up and say, yeah, kind of pick me. I'll have a go. Let's see how we do. And you'll be welcome with open arms. So that's the tier 1 for sustainable change. I'm now going to move on to tier 2. So this is the 3rd section, which is managing change. And then so there's going to be some warning you now. There's going to be some audience participation at this point. Okay, so this is about you understanding the internal and external drivers for change, and you can help your colleagues understand the vision for change or why the need for change. So external factors may be the environment. So where are we? What are we doing? How we're working? Where are people based? It's geopolitics, so it's not necessarily a very nice world out there at the moment, and your suppliers may be being affected because you can't get things in, you can't get things out. There's threats of things happening all over the place, which is then threatening your supply chain. There's economic threat, so not necessarily stability at the moment. The societal risks as well, or pressures around people wanting to be more sustainable, understanding more about where their product's coming from, who's working on it, is it reusable, is it going to harm the carbon footprint, are people being paid a fair wage for the work that they're doing? And then there's always the advancement of technology. When I started at Rolls-Royce, Teams were the people that you went out with on a Friday night, not a computer system that you would use there. So that's always evolving and adapting, and we have to make sure that we're identifying those and changing with them. So while I have a slurp on my tea, is anybody brave enough to put in the chat maybe any internal drivers that they can think about within their organisation? Anybody's still there? There we go. Employees, yeah. Consistent communications with suppliers, yeah. So employees have different needs, different requirements, different reasons for being at work. Yeah. Profitability, absolutely. Operational growth, yeah. So wanting to get more people power, yeah. Profit, machinery, bonuses, finance team to improve the bottom, yeah. Repeating the work, acquisitions, processes. Perfect, you see. So you're already at tier 1 are managing change. A new CEO, yes. Organizational change, yeah. There's some laughing faces with there, so that's obviously people understanding that as well. So just with a bit of thought, and you read the tier of the level, you might first read it and go, oh gosh, drivers for change. Actually, just think about it. What are the things that are impacting us? So that's really good. Thank you very much for letting me have a slip of my tea. That's very much appreciated. So then we talk about change management tools and approaches within a team. So hopefully you've heard of the Cotter model. So it's a excuse me, an 8-step model. So you really want to create a climate for change. So create that sense of urgency. Then you need to, once you've created that, I was talking about a burning platform about 12 months ago. And then you've got to build that coalition to people to get behind, to recognise, understand that there is that urgency and what that urgency is. And then you've got to start to create a vision. Where are you? Where do you want to get to? And then you've got to enable and engage the organisation. So once you've got that vision, you've got to communicate that vision. So it's really important where somebody mentioned in the chat about communication with suppliers, but you've got to communicate internally as well as externally. If you've got suppliers, they've absolutely got to be on board with your urgency and being part of your coalition. Otherwise, they're not going to interact very well. You've got to empower others. So you've got to give them this is a reason why, how can we help? How can you help us? How can we help you? A bit of a servant leadership thing. And then you've got to generate some quick wins. There's no good putting a project in that's going to take 18 months if you want to create a sense of urgency. So how do we get the quick wins? How do we celebrate them? How do we then start the snowball effect of then being able to get everybody involved? Then we've got to implement it and sustain it. So you've got to build on the change. So once you've changed it, get the quick wins, get the next one, get the next one. And then you've got to embed the change, which then goes back to my previous point around snapping the elastic. The new way has to be the way, and everybody's then got to build on it through there. There is also a great book out there, and it's another Cotter one about our iceberg is melting. So it's a colony of penguins who have to change how they do things and how they look at things. It's a very insightful read if anybody wants to get that. That's good. And then there's the bit about the stakeholders. So I apologise now for anybody that's too young not to remember Rick Astley, but I call this my Rick Astley chart. So you start off all guns blazing and it's like, yeah, we're all going to go and do this. We're all going to get this improvement. Sarah, you've inspired us. We're all going to go and do this. And then you do a workshop for a week and then everybody goes out over the weekend and then comes back. And then reality hits of, oh dear, we told Sarah on Friday we were going to do all this stuff, but actually we've got a day job to do. And sometimes we get lost a little bit. But this is where you've got to never give up. This is where the Rick Astley bit comes from. And you've really got to drive that on. Make sure, even if you get a small win and a small win and a small win, drive that through. Don't stop, just keep going. Because if you're not careful, you can go into this bit and then you get that fixed mindset back of, well, we've tried this all before, what's going to be different this time? And actually some of the change is actually yourself, so you can start to support others and go, yeah, you're going to feel like everything's exciting, then it's too hard, but actually just chip away a bit, make yourself some quick wins and some simple milestones to do. Excuse me. So then we're now on to tier 3. So this is around we're on innovating and creating opportunities, and tier 3 within that part of the improvement competency. So I'm really lucky. So I work for a big organization that's got an innovation portal. So I started there and looking at this. What is it? How do you create opportunities for engagement with innovation? And I think it just breaks down to 2 simple things. Are you asking people for ideas on improvement? So have you got a suggestion scheme? So have you got a mechanism for people to say, I think we could do this better? Is it an improvement suggestion scheme on paper? Is it an electronic form? How are we bringing that to the surface? But then equally, have we got a known business problem? And are we asking people with a fresh pair of eyes to think differently about it, how it could be solved? Because sometimes we're quite filtered in our way of thinking, and we did that, so now we need to try that. So maybe have it as like an innovation challenge, and we have quite a few of those that come on. So they're open to anybody, and someone come on, this is the problem that I have. Give me some ideas of how I might be able to go and do it. And the wackier the better sometimes, and then you can build on from there. So I think that's the bit of think about how are you giving your people the opportunity to raise improvement ideas or get engaged with stuff, because what people do in their day job 8 hours might not be what they're interested outside of work. So you may have somebody who's a specialist in it, it's just not what their job is, and you can get them engaged in it. And then this is about the formulation of pilot studies and experiments. So I googled this, I'll be honest. And it said what you need to do is you need to define your hypotheses, choose your method, plan your experiment, execute the experiment, analyse your results, and then iterate and improve. And the improvement cynic in me went, I've seen that somewhere before. So anybody know DMAIC? So define, measure, analyse, improve, control, define the problem, quantify the problem, analyse the root cause, implement and verify the solution, and then maintain the solution. You may also have heard of PDCA, so plan, do, check, act, which is around those different circles. So again, it feels like it's saying innovation and experiments, but we're doing that all the time. I see there, Jonathan, yeah, you need a success criteria. Absolutely. So that's the hypothesis, isn't it? When you go through what's the problem statement, what you're trying to get to, and then you execute it, you analyze your analyze your results, and you go, did it make a difference? And if it did make a difference, fantastic, let's implement it. And if it didn't, let's just go again. Let's go again.
No, that isn't quite correct. Success criteria look at it at a higher level, so it's a meta model of what the hypothesis is.
Okay.
Success could be that it didn't work. That's
yes.
a legitimate outcome. So it sits above the hypothesis.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I do an awful lot of experimentation.
Right. Okay, super.
So if you don't set out what success looks like, your experiments become worthless, and it can be very difficult to know what success is going to be. A lot of what we do, the experiment doesn't work, but that is successful because that's what we wanted to know.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be you improve something by that. It's knowing what you're not going to do again, which is fantastic, which is really interesting around the resilience and the agility piece. So how are we resilient to that change of it didn't work? That's great. What can we learn from it? What information did we get? What's the next experiment based on the information that we found? And then this is the agility to move fast as well. So how do we make sure that we are reacting to the information that we're finding and having that experimental, that innovative, that continuous improvement mindset to want to drive forward, not go, oh, it was unsuccessful, therefore I'm not going to try anything again. And I saw this quote from Malcolm X, and I really liked it in terms of children. If you observe children, they're the people that experiment probably the most. They evolve all the time. They find different ways of being able to do things. They watch, they learn, they learn to walk in different ways. They learn to talk in different ways, how to adapt, how to communicate. So actually, if you ever want to get some great guidance on experiments, children are the great ways to look at that. And it's really interesting as well, where you were saying there, Jonathan, around that kind of stuff. So this is about how you can analyze and evaluate concepts and risk. So somebody might come and say, I had a brilliant idea. It will reduce the cost of operating one of our critical processes. Can we do it? And you look at cost and go, oh, right, okay, brilliant. It looks like you're going to make things better for me. But what you've got to do is have a look at a broader spectrum. Because if I was then to say to you, it reduces my cost, however, it makes my safety a little bit worse, the answer's potentially different. So it's just having that rounded view of what are the risks, what are the real impacts. So great, what are the benefits? what's the risk of not doing it, but what's the risks of doing it, and having that captured in there. So that's the level 3 on the managing change, and then tier 4 for delivering sustainable change. So as I mentioned before, this is about continuous improvement. So for me, lead, develop or advise on the selection and prioritization of improvement. So we've got our value stream. How do we support the priority projects? How do we identify them? How do we make sure we've got the right people supporting that through the right skill set? How have we got the right rules and tools and processes? So again, do they just need some help with problem solving techniques? Do they need us to run a DMAIC project? Which is the right tool for the job to help the right person at the right time? Making sure then that we're doing coaching and facilitation and belt mentoring. So making sure that we're increasing the capability of the business, having some community of practice for people that are in maybe belts in training. So how did that feel? How's that gone through? And then sharing that good stuff. So life on here, by the way, just means lean improvement for everybody, which is an initiative that we had in Rolls-Royce a couple of years ago. So that's how do we engage everybody, get everybody involved in doing an improvement project. So they actually had an objective cascaded down through the business. So how do we get people to do that? And then the next thing is around being how do we do that? So I showed you earlier about the approach that I've got with my team about improvement ideas, but it is why is it important? Why is this idea or is improvement that you want to do? Why is it important, and which business priority does it link to? So is it like a pet project, or can you show me a link of if we do this, it will impact that? And we should be able to make those connections. We should also talk about the benefit of doing this. Is it time? Is it money? Is it an enabler? Is it an engagement? Because sometimes improvements are enablers and engagement. They might not show you a bottom line improvement. It might not save you any time, but actually getting people engaged and on part of this journey is really good. But also we've got to think about what are the consequences for not doing it. Again, output, time, money, engagement. So why should we do it, and what happens if we don't do it? So we can really start to grow that portfolio of the important stuff to do. And then we come on to being able to sponsor. So it's really important to have great sponsorship on improvement activities. Sponsors unblock so many things. So they're accountable directly for the project deliverables. They give direction to the project leader, but they make sure that there's adequate support for the project team. So they're barrier busters effectively. So I'm going to give you all this support. I'm going to give you the help. And actually, I'm accountable for the delivery of this. And my job is to support you to make sure that you get there. So projects that are focused on the important things, which is what we talked about in the prioritization before. It's an achievable scope. So it's not fix the world. It's how can we do this bit? Real clear priorities, and there's no conflict with a priority from a different area or a different part of the business plan deployment. It should be really clear. Single sponsorship is preferred. So there's one person that the book stops with and they can go and ask that time for. Sometimes that's more difficult if you're doing a more complex project where there's different parts of the business involved, because sometimes people want to have their name on that sponsor bit. They need to make sure teams have got time. So have the resource been brought off, not just the skill set, but the resources. And sometimes they don't equate to the same thing. So yes, you can have this person, but I'm not going to allocate any time. You need to keep the team highly motivated. You need to make sure that the progress is rapid. You need to make sure that the project delivers the benefit, that the ideas are implemented, and that they're sustained. So you're making sure that there's a success through there. So on the flip side, there's some really positive points that a sponsor should be doing, but sometimes there's some common mistakes that they make. So they don't communicate the reason for change, a bit like the Cutter model, and they don't get that guiding coalition of people that go, oh yeah, it's a really good idea. I know my equivalent is sponsoring that. Yes, it's important, and this is why it's important. They don't deal sometimes with the resistance to change early on. So no, I'm not doing that, or no, I don't want to get involved with that. They don't clarify expectations with managers for resource, or even the managers of the areas where the change is going to happen. They don't spend enough time on the project or with the project. They allow the projects to drift or lose focus, and sometimes they move on too soon. So they go, thank you very much. There's a bit of a framework that you can use. So understand what the good project is, get a good problem statement, involve everybody, help with the stakeholder analysis, set up reviews, manage organisational expectations, and then make sure that we reward and recognise and celebrate success. That can be a thank you, that can be a mention in a magazine, or we've got something called Kudos where you can send electronic thanks to people. It might be a simple thank you, which sometimes we forget to do. But it's really important that the sponsor is heavily involved in the beginning. So setting that scope with the project leader, and then the project leader kind of takes over, but the sponsor's still there. And at the end, it's the other bit with the sponsor congratulating people, thanking people for their involvement, shouting and sharing about the change, which is really important. Then we've also got about leading and developing and advising on improvement frameworks. So this is the Rolls-Royce problem solving or methods landscape. So typically on the left-hand side, we've got getting problem solving, so getting things back to standard. And the right-hand side is the improvement, so raising the standard. I'm acutely aware that you can interchange the other two, but this is for simplification of doing that. So just do it. So fix a gap or do an improvement. Maybe do a bit with a team with a solve it sheet or a Kaizen. It might be a half a day, it might be a day. What's an 8D? So how do you go on problem solving? How do you make sure that you're closing that? You're doing your containment right, you've got root cause. Value stream map. So what's my end-to-end process? What's my value add ratio? Some of them are frightening that I've done. And then how do I remove the waste? These are really great to do in transactional stuff where people may see your material stuff or your value stream on the shop floor, but they don't necessarily understand that then they've got a value because they've got one of their outputs goes to directly into the shop. So it might be where you create the instructions. So how quickly do you get them there? What's your turnaround time? How adapt are you? How quick are you to reacting to change that people see, or how you do that? And then the more complex problems up at the top, so you'd have your maybe green belts, black belts, master black belts, working on those things. So again, that's how I was saying around the standard and the drift and the continuous improvement across the different sides. I'm just going to show you a quick example of an application of the make that I did when I was an improvement leader in one of our casting facilities. So this was an inspection area inside the wax room of one of our facilities. And as you can see, lots of different bits around, lots of different parts, lots of instructions, lots of interruptions going on. So actually we weren't having we were having lots of mistakes. Well, mistakes that were passing through. So errors could be caused because of a cluttered workstation. We've got poor workflow. We can lose batch integrity. So all of these parts are serialized. They're HP turbine blades. The documents are often misplaced because they're pieces of paper inside plastic envelopes to protect them from the wax, but then they're put in there. But actually, they may not be aware of some of the issues and then that part then goes through. So the inspection area isn't great because it's the same same area. The lighting wasn't fantastic. There's personal items all over the place. The inspection work was mixed up with the other work. So normal progress in work and then inspection work. The inspector was regularly interrupted, be that, do you want a cup of tea? To, can you inspect this one for me? I need to get it out. The instructions weren't located near the person, so the chances of them getting them out were less and less and less and less. And actually, we've had quality alerts that have been raised to highlight some non-conformances and care points to look out for. And again, they weren't there. They were over in like a focal area. They weren't together with the inspectors. So that's kind of like a problem definition. And that we did. So the team were really on board, and they let us do like a gauge R&R study or measurement system. And then we were trying to look at, do you agree with yourself? So are you consistently making the same decision? Do you then agree amongst yourselves? So do we get a consistent output? So you're looking at reproducibility and repeatability. And actually we found that they agreed with themselves, but they didn't necessarily agree with each other. and the kappa value was really poor. And actually at that point, the kappa value, and I don't know whether it is now because we're going back a few years now, for visual inspection was 0.85. So we were a country mile away from doing that. So it's like, right, fantastic. We know we've got the measure. So we know that we thought it wasn't great, and now we know that it's not great. So then we go, well, what are the kind of things that we've got that we can go and help us? So we've got the Rolls-Royce production system, which actually had a section around how to standardise visual inspection. And then we had inspection leaders across different sites. So we tried to ask them in their community of practice, what did you do? How would you do it? How would you do things going forward? What are the standard practices? Where are the standards? So it used to be the Rolls-Royce quality management system. And then once we'd agreed what good looks like and how you create, and so the guide the RRPS took you through the create an inspection area. We actually built a whole new area, separate, away from everywhere else, sectioned off. You have to like open the door to go in. We weren't quite a swipe access then, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't now. Completely separate area, only inspection work was allowed in there. We created standard working instructions that the team went through, a 3C board so that people could understand what was going on. We also had some right first time data and information inside the cell so that the inspectors could do a handover if anything new had come through. And it was, so one of the things that we did as part of this training material as well, so they updated the instructions. The inspectors were really good and they really got on board with it. They actually let me video them doing it, so following the standard work process. So the only thing they wouldn't do is the voiceover, so I had to do that a bit, which is so they actually followed it step by step. So when we had people coming in to train, yes, they could have the on-the-job training, obviously, that they would as well, but actually talking them through, you're looking for this, you're looking for that, you're looking for that, was absolutely really powerful. So, you know, no time study, that wasn't what it was about. It was about getting the information, the detail, and the understanding of what it was that they were looking for, and then making sure that the wording in the instruction tallied up with what they were actually looking for, because sometimes you can have discrepancies. So we absolutely then made sure we did the same assessment again, and it was the same parts and the same people, and actually the increase was massive. So we created a 5-step training program. We had sustainment process checks in there. So we made sure that the lighting, that the lux levels of the lighting were managed. We made sure that the noise control was managed, that we made sure that we did checks every now and again to make sure that nobody was going in there that shouldn't be, that they'd only got the inspection work that was in there. So we did all this great work, and then we communicated it out. So we'd done it in one cell, in one part of the business, and it had really worked. So the next stage is we rolled it across the other areas, operating areas was in that part of that factory. And then the factory next door and the factory next door absolutely went and did the same thing. So that's the bit of how do we do that? But fantastic. Kappa value is 0.8. So it's easier now. Fantastic. Okay. So then it talks about, so that's like a DMAIC example, and one of the things it talks about then in the tiers is around being able to coach multiple stuff, being able to support different areas. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of the stuff that me and my team are involved with at the minute. So hopefully you'll remember, but there's no test, that this bit in the middle is one of our value streams, so the customer to customer value stream that we run in our part of the business. So our main input is our policy, because our policy tells us what we need to do, how often we need to take things off, what the life are of things, and what the expectations are. Once something comes in to be overhauled, what does it do on its first visit? What does it do on its second visit? Our process is that value stream. So the value stream is the same. You may take different things off, but you're still going to strip it, you're still going to kit it, and you're still going to rebuild it. You just might do different things to it. And our output really is kind of, yes, we output engines, but the output that we get, or the feedback that we get back in, is customer satisfaction. Did we deliver it on time? Did we deliver it in the quality that we've said we're going to do it? And did it arrive to you when we said? Because it's fine having a TRT, but if you don't get it, if you don't turn around time, but if you don't deliver it on time, it doesn't help. So we've got customer satisfaction. So the colour code on here is my team are supporting the engine teams with how do we standardize policy? How do we make sure it's really clear? They're helping in the value stream. So we've got work going up on engine build up activities. We're looking at how do we reduce the removal to induction time. That's not removal to induction in the shop. This is how do we make sure that we've got things that are ready to enable the flow of engines through the shop. We've got critical parts. So how do we make sure that our kits are always ready on time and that we're shouting up to the supply chain when we want some new ones, but how are we doing some help ourselves with the reuse and repair? We've got rate enablers work that's going on. So how can we put more through the shop? How can we get the capacity? So how can we get the waste out to improve the rate? We've got test right first time. So it's about £1 million every time we have a return to shop incident. So that's fuel, time, everything calculated into that. We're doing some process simplification. So how do we find the safest and the most efficient way? We're doing process standardization. So that's within our Rolls-Royce management system. We've got digitization opportunities as well. So we offer physical engines, but we've also got digital service as well. And then how do we look at, once we've started to simplify and standardize things, how can we then start to automate it and digitize it? So I'm one for what's the executive system, and then how do I make the executive system better? We've also at the moment got 6 green belts in training, so running improvement projects across the value stream, and 3 black belts in training as well. So my team are coaching those. And then it talks about tools and organising the business as well. So I'm fortunate enough to work with our leadership team on what we call business plan deployment. You'll hear people call it policy deployment. So this is how we make sure that we get those strategic goals and then they are communicated and translated into an action. So how do I connect with what I'm doing? We also call it Hoshin Cannery. Hoshin means the direction and Cannery means control. So if anybody uses challenges are on that, that's what that means. And I like to use it with my leadership team and give the example of President Kennedy went to NASA in 1962 and he asked the janitor who was carrying a broom, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm helping put a man on the moon, Mr. President." He didn't say, "I'm sweeping up after those people in there." He actually could get a connection with what he was doing and how that was helping and supporting other people. So if you put yourself in that position, when you're trying to do that, how can you make people connect? How do you get it so that your team can say, what I am doing connects with the higher level organizational strategic goals? There's a really simple matrix that you can use. So what's the vision? It can be aspirational. It doesn't have to have anything on there. It might be, trusted to deliver excellence for something that we had in Rolls-Royce. Yeah. Then you've got some goals. They're also aspirational at this point. They're not meant to be smart. So it might be delight my customers. There we go. That's one that's on there. And then you start to get into, well, how am I going to do that? So what kind of projects am I going to go after? So a little bit more tangible. So it might be, well, I want to be the best supplier of, overhaul services. Yeah. And then what am I going to do? Well, I need to improve my C2C performance. Right, and then you get to your improvement targets, which absolutely have to be smart. So specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, and time-bound, so that people can connect with them. So actually, you've gone from, I want to be great, to what I want to do is I want to have 100% on time and full delivery by March 2024. And then you've got to build that coalition. So who is accountable for delivering it and who's going to support? And that's where you start to get the businesses, and then you can rotate that round to get different teams involved. So you would have a strategic vision, which is like then a business policy deployment. Then each of the teams can have theirs and make sure that they're connecting up. And if they need to be collaborating, they do. Manage on how you're getting along with your goals. What are the plans? What's your strategic plan? And then how is that impacting the results? Whether that's weekly, daily, and it's a bit like the plan, do, check, act cycle as well. So that's how I'm using that to make sure I can lead and develop the leadership team to deliver connection and clear objectives to people to support the greater good. Woo! And there we go, 5 minutes over. So I'm I'll hand over now. I will exit the presentation and swap my screens over. And
Lovely.
I'll at least look like I'm